How's it going, guys? My name is Luke Ulofse. Welcome to my first maths video. Today we're going to be looking at paper 1 of 2020, question 1, algebra. It's going to include normal problem solving for x. We're going to have the quadratic equation, inequalities, and simultaneous equations. So let's take a look. Right, so question 1.1, solve for x. We have 1.1.1 x squared minus 6x equals 0. Now what usually happens here when we have two types of x's without another constant is we usually will then take out an x as a common factor. So we'll have x, put the brackets in, x minus 6 equals 0, and now the product, the x has to be a 0 or the x minus 6 has to be 0. So therefore we've got x equals 0 or x minus 6 must equal 0, therefore x is 6 equals 6. Okay, question 1.1.2. We have x squared plus 10x plus 8 equals 0. It says correct to two decimal places, so we know we're going to use the quadratic formula. So let's write that out first. We have x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, and that is all going to be over 2a. Okay, now we're going to put in the values for a, b, and c. We're going to have x equals negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 10 squared minus 4 times 1 times 8, and that is going to be over 2 times 1. If we put that into our calculator, we are then going to get an answer, two answers actually, that x equals negative 0.88 rounded off to two decimal places, or x equals negative 9.12 rounded off to two decimal places. Okay, question 1.1.3, we have bracket 1 minus x, bracket, another bracket, x plus 2, close bracket, and that is going to show an inequality which is less than 0. So first we have to find our critical values, our CV. Our critical values are the values for each of these brackets that will make the brackets equal to 0. So our first CV is that x equals 1. Our second CV is that x equals negative 2. Now we're going to put that on a number line. So we're going to draw out the number line. Put in your critical values. So let's say here is 1, that's going to be 0. I'm going to say here is negative 2, that's going to be 0. We're then going to take a value between 1 and negative 2 to put back into the brackets. An easy one is 0. So we will then have in the brackets 1 minus 0, bracket, and we're going to have 0 plus 2. And that's going to be 1 times 2 equals 2. We can see that it equals a positive number. And so what we're going to do on this timeline is we're going to put between the two zeros, between the 1 and the negative 2, we're going to put a positive. Now, because that is a positive, we're then going to make the outsides a negative each, because that's the way it works. If you want to test that, we can put a 2, which is above the 1, we can put a 2 into the bracket. And if we put a 2 into the bracket, we then have 1 minus 2, close bracket, open bracket, 2 plus 2, and that's going to give us negative 1 times 4 equals negative 4. So therefore we're going to have a negative on that side. And if we take a negative 3, which is further to the left or is smaller than negative 2, we are then going to get in the brackets, bracket 1 minus negative 3, put that in its own bracket so you don't forget the sign, timesing by negative 3 plus 2. And that is going to then give us 4 times negative 1, which then equals negative 4. And so on the outsides we have negatives, and on the insides we have a positive. Okay, now that we have our signs, we are then going to draw arrows to help us to solve this equation and show us what to write. So because it is a straight less than, it's not less than or equal to, we are going to use open circles. And now we're going to show arrows as to where we're going. We need to go towards the negative because anything less than 0 is negative. And so we're going to move our arrow towards the negative side. And we're going to do the same on the other side. We're going to use an open circle, and then our arrow is going to point towards the negative side, which we've proven. Okay, and now for our answer, we just got to follow the arrows. We have x is less than negative 2, and we have x is greater than 1. Question 1.1.4, we have a root with an x plus 18 inside of it, and that's going to equal x minus 2. Okay, so what we want to do here is square the left-hand side to get rid of that square root. So we'll have an x plus 18 equals, on this side we'll have x minus 2 squared, and that's going to give us x plus 18 equals x squared minus 4x plus 4. And the reason how I got that is that you square the first term, which is going to give us an x squared, and then you're going to times the two terms, the x and the negative 2 together, and then times it by 2. So you're going to have negative 4x because we have an x times negative 2 times 2. And then we're going to square the last term. So it's negative 2 times negative 2, and it's going to go plus 4. So that's how we get that part. And now we're going to put into standard form. We want all the x's and everything on the left hand side. So I'm just going to write this out like this: x squared minus 4x minus x, because we brought it over the equal sign, so change the sign. We're going to have a plus 4, and we're going to take the 18 over as well to make it negative 18. And that is going to equal 0. Okay, and then we're going to simplify this. We've got our x squared. Negative 4x minus x is going to be negative 5x. So we cancel those two are finished. That is finished. We're only left with a plus 4 minus 18, which is going to give us negative 14 equals 0. We're then going to factorize this equation, and so we'll have one bracket with an x in it and another bracket with an x in it. Those are equal to 0. And our two factors are then going to be -7 and +2. And to make each of these brackets equal to 0, it's going to mean that x is going to equal +7, or x is going to equal -2. Lastly, because this equation has a square root in it, we have to check our x's because one of them is going to be incorrect. So if we check the left-hand side with x equals 7, we have a square root of 7 plus 18, and that gives us square root of 25, which is equal to 5 on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, it would mean we have 7 minus 2, which is equal to 5. So the 7 works. Let's check the -2. Checking the left-hand side with x equals -2, we have a square root with -2 plus 18, which will equal root 16, which is equal to 4 on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, we will have -2 minus 2, which will equal -4. And so 4 and -4 do not match up. And therefore, our answer is going to be x equals 7. So what we're going to do is cross out the equal sign on the x equals -2, and our answer is x equals 7. Okay, question 1.2, solve simultaneously for x and y. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to use this equation and get it into a formula where y is the subject. And the reason why I'm choosing y is because if we look at this formula, we have an x that has a squared on it, but we don't have any y's that have a squared on it. So it is going to be a lot simpler if we use y and then substitute that into the rest of the formula. So what we're going to do is we're going to say x plus y equals 3, and we are then going to say y equals 3 minus x. We're going to take x over the equal sign and change the sign. And now we're going to use this, and we're going to put that into this equation. Wherever it says y, we're going to put 3 minus x. So let's go ahead and do that. We have 2x squared plus 4x. Now where the y is, we're going to put a bracket. We're going to go 3 minus x. And then we're going to say minus, and again 3 minus x equals 15. And now we're going to times out all the brackets. So we've got 2x squared plus, we have 12x minus 4x squared. Then we have minus 3 plus x, remember the plus, equals 15. Then we're going to simplify it. We're going to find out where our x squareds are, our x's and our constants. So we are going to have a 2x minus 4x squared, which is going to be negative 2x squared. So we use this one and we use this one. And then we are going to see where the x's are. So that's plus 12x plus x. So we're going to say plus 13x. So we use that one and we use that one. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say it's negative 3, but we're going to take the 15 over the equal sign to make it negative as well. So negative 3 minus 15 is going to be negative 18 equals 0. Now we are going to take out a negative sign to make the 2x squared positive. So we're going to have 2x squared minus 13x plus 18 equals 0. And now we are going to factorize this. So we're going to draw the brackets. We've got one bracket with a 2x in it. We've got another bracket with just an x in it. And that equals 0. And our two factors are going to be a negative 9 and a negative 2. And so now for each of these brackets to equal 0, we will have x equals 9 over 2 or x equals 2. And now we have to use those and put them back into the top equation to get what the value of y will be for each of those. Okay, so we're going to put x equals 9 over 2 or x equals 2 into this equation. And so we have 9 over 2 plus y equals 3. And so we say y equals 3 minus 9 over 2, which is actually 4.5. And therefore, y equals negative 3 over 2. You can use a calculator, which is the same as negative 1.5. Okay, and now we're going to put the x equals 2 in. We're going to have 2 plus y equals 3. And so y equals 3 minus 2, and therefore y equals 1. This means we're going to be left with x equals 9 over 2 and y equals negative 3 over 2, or x equals 2 and or y equals 1. Okay, last question for question 1 is 1.3. If n is the largest integer for which n to the power of 200 is smaller than 5 to the power of 300, determine the value of n. Right, so this question is a little bit different to the ones we've just been doing, but it is a great question, and this is how we are going to do it. So first, what we want to do is find the same power for both of these terms. We've got n to the 200 and 5 to the 300, and what you can see is that 200 and 300 both have a multiple of 100. So we're going to take a 100 out, and we will be left with, in brackets, n to the 2, 100 on the outer side, is less than 5, also in brackets, and that's going to be to the 3, but it's also going to have 100 on the outside. And the reason why we want the same powers on the outside is that so we can root them to the same root, and that will get rid of the powers on the outside. So if we now 100th root each of these terms, we will then be left with n squared is less than 5 cubed. Now if you look on your calculator, n squared is then going to be less than 5 cubed is 125. And now to get n by itself, we square root n, so n is going to be less than square root of 125, which is actually going to be n is less than 11.18. And because n has to be an integer, we then have that n is equal to 11. And that is how we do that question. Awesome stuff, guys. I hope you enjoyed that and found that helpful. If there is anything I missed or if you guys are still stuck, just comment down below. I will get back to you as soon as possible. I will be doing more videos on the next couple of questions in the 2020 paper, so stay tuned and I will see you on the next video. Cheers.